she was taking a long walk, that was normal. But once he hit a certain time, it wasn't normal. And if Judy told you she was coming back, which she did, she said, I'll be back in a little bit. She would do what she said. She'd be back home.
And it wasn't a very long walk to the library from the house,
No.
was it? About 10, 15 minutes?
Correct.
About,
Okay.
Correct.
My brother-in-law passed away, and she was concerned about where he was at.
because she didn't get to go to the funeral.
And we thought she would possibly be over in the cemetery looking for the plot where he was buried. And we checked that out. That was one of the first places we checked. And she wasn't there. So I run the roads back and forth from here to the farm and couldn't find her any place. Had I known you could get there the way she went, I would have been able to find her. But I didn't know that way. She always run around finding different places to drive and nose around to. And
We would always, Judy and I would take Mom for different rides. And Judy found that route and thought it was so beautiful. And she liked to take Mom on, and she had drove that way with her several times. But I said, I never dreamed of her ever walking.
that was the shortest way to the farm.
Yeah,
here.
they told us, the police told us that that was the shortest way. But to walk it, I still believe anyone could walk that far,
Yeah, no.
but
So we did look at it. So from that day, she left the house to go return some books and movies to the library, which is a
Right.
2-minute walk or not very far. Is that right?
yeah, about 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
And
Mhm.
they did tell us that she turned her everything in. So
Okay,
we know she made it that far.
okay, perfect.
After that, we have no idea definitely until they were looking for her, and then they called in that she was missing. And they said you have to wait 24 hours before you do anything,
Or they can do it.
before they can do anything.
So
So
we
when
done,
did you call the police? What time? Do you know when that was?
Well,
No, it's a-
Michelle had asked me, because we took Michelle's girls to church with us that night. And so she asked me, would Judy be still at the library? So me and Jim went to the library and checked for her. And then we went to we went toward the cemetery because I knew she was wanting to see where Uncle Bill was buried. So we went there and it was locked up. So we went into the park, Parkersburg Park, and found a police officer there. So we told him about her missing. So then he came to Grandma's house.
About what time is that?
That would have been after church, so it's after, I say, gone on 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Right.
And then he went to the house and talked to the family, ask them questions.
Okay.
I want to remind everybody real fast that this is all pre-recorded. It's not live. I can edit in and out. So if at any point you guys need to stop for a couple minutes and take a breather and or anything like that, just please feel free to do it.
Okay.
So, Mr. Petty, you decided to, from looking at the timeline that your family provided and trying to pull things together, you decided that you were going to go take Rhodes to the farm, which is about a 20-minute drive from where she was last seen near the library. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay, so walk me through that. You decided you're just going to head out that way and see if you can see her, and you made it to the farm?
that was my idea, that good possibility she wouldn't have been there yet.
Okay.
And I drove out Route 2 and out 31 to the farm. I drove the old St. Mary's Pike out to the farm. And I never seen her no place or sign of where she had been. And had I known, like I said, I would have found her.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say that, Mr. Petty. I hope you're not putting a lot of, I know it's hard for me to say, but she might have not already been walking if you would have went that way. It's hard to know if she was already picked up or whatnot. So I feel, my heart feels for you. Unfortunately, I don't know if that would have made a difference, but so you got to the farm, and tell us what you did, because you went there a few times. So I want listeners to hear, you went the first time and what happened? Did you get out of your car? Did you go all the way up? What did you do?
No, I just went on out the road. There was another place that we had family in the cemetery. I went out and checked that too.
I know.
No, she was saying when you went to the farm, did you get out? And you said, oh,
No,
my dad's a hunter. So he always looks for footprints. And he thought he wasn't going to waste his time to drive all the way up to the hill because it could have been muddy. That he looks for footprints at the bottom of our hill. You could see if somebody walked up there.
Right.
And he didn't see any prints. So he continued on.
Right.
And it wasn't until the next morning he decided to drive up to the farm.
Right.
You wanna tell the part?
So you went out to the farm the first time after you went to the cemetery, right? So you went to the farm or cemetery, and then you went to your farm, and nothing was disturbed, right? You didn't see anything. There was nothing suspicious whatsoever.
no.
No.
So then, and that's okay. I just want listeners
He
to
didn't
walk.
go up. He didn't go up to the farm. He
Right.
drove past the bottom of the farm.
They need to
Right.
understand. There's
Right.
410.
So you just drove past the farm, and then from there, did you just take a back home to
Yes,
different roads? Okay. Okay.
I went back a different way.
You went back a different way.
That's just something I didn't know. I wished I had it.
I know.
How
But
far
it's
is
hard
it?
to know,
Oh, I know. It's goes over and over in your mind. What if?
I know.
From the bottom of our hill to the main road is about how far up to the farm?
3/10 of a
Three.
mile.
3/10 of a mile. So again,
That's a distance.
Yeah,
So
Right.
the first time that you drove past there on that night, did you see any smoke, any flames? You didn't see anything. All was quiet. Is that right?
Right. Yes.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So you get home, the police come to the house, you file a missing persons report.
Right.
Family, you all continue to look for her until 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Right? No sign of her anywhere.
Correct.
Okay. So then the next morning you wake up, I'm sure you didn't sleep very well or hardly at all. No, Mrs. Petty, that was hard, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Everything going through your mind?
First thing I did the next morning was go to the farm.
Okay.
I drove up pretty much to the farmhouse. I got out and walked. I found footprint. I took, not at that time, but I took a picture later. Went up to the house. And till I got right to the place, I never even noticed it was on fire. There was still probably 2 foot of flame in the middle of the house. And
Do you
That's what-
remember? Mhm.
that's when I had no phone with me. Had to go back down the hill and go to the neighbors, get a phone and call.
Okay,
I said, the house is burnt to the ground and there's no sign of Judy yet. So that's pretty much where I went to pieces.
okay. So do you remember about what time you got up and you started?
I'd say probably at that time, probably 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Okay, okay. And that was your first trip back out to the farm, or did you go back out and then, or was that your third trip?
That was probably the 5th or 6th trip.
Okay, okay, okay. So you were back and forth just because where
Yeah.
else could she be, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So the reason I'm asking that for this is because the beautiful chronicle order that you all put together, I'm just putting together a very easy first glance timeline. So I was just kind of trying to get times and that's why I'm wondering. So when you went back out and you decided to go up the driveway, you could only go so far, and tell me why.
well, I could have went closer to the farm, but had I got into some wires that was over across the road. But it was a little bit
Mhm,
soggy
mhm.
and I didn't want to get hung up.
Smoke.
So I parked the car and walked the rest of the way up.
Okay. And my understanding from the reports too is that it was very muddy after where I think you probably stopped and you had to get out and walk because vehicles couldn't go up unless you were on a 4-wheeler. Is that right?
Right.
Well,
Yeah, correct.
possible I could have, but I didn't want to chance it.
Right. No, absolutely, sir. So the reason I'm like asking so listeners can know that you couldn't just drive up, or so whoever went up there or was up there, probably a vehicle going up that driveway probably wouldn't have made it.
Right.
Unless it's 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Unless a 4-wheel.
4-wheel drive would have went in,
Yeah.
no problem. They came in the next day. I also was in the next day
That
with
was.
the 4-wheel drive.
Okay. So you got up to the top of the house. The house is in flames. Tell us about that. What did you see? What was going through your mind? Like what did it look like?
Pretty well all gone.
It's like a war zone.
It just, the main beam in the bottom of the house, it didn't have a basement in it, so crawl space, and the middle beam was still burning. And that was about all still burning. And of course, I didn't go over and look in the cellar house for no reason. And it was still on fire.
Okay.
There
So
was, there's a lot of wood in that cellar house. There's about 3 bundles of oak flooring. This is in the top part of it, nothing down in the basement. Only mostly fruit jars and things like that. But the whole top was all burned up at that time. So I didn't know what else to do. I was just called,
Yeah.
just to try to get some help.
Yeah. So for listeners to know, so there's your house, and none of this was nobody was living on this property.
No,
No.
So you have your house, and then separate is a cellar, but it was more like a shed for wood and tools. Is that what you used it for?
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it had Did a table in there that we wasn't using, and some wood, and some of my junk.
Just a little bit of storage.
It was,
But that's, I never dreamed of anything like that.
I know,
Never.
nobody.
No,
the cellar house, the kids were always afraid because there was a black snake that stayed down there. And they would not go down and play, but they would play in the top part once in a while. And I said, I just couldn't believe when they found her remains.
those lines that you was asking about in the bottom of the cellar house, there's a well down in the barn,
Right,
and it pumped water from there into a storage tank. And there's also the well outside of it. It also went into that tank, and then from there into the house. The tank wasn't in there at the time. I took it out. And it's still out the barn, I think, someplace. It's,
So the cellar is, how big would you say?
He said about 14
Um,
by 10.
I'm gonna guess 8, 10,
No, it was about 14 by 10.
14
14,
by 10.
well,
10 by 14, yeah.
10, 14,
Yeah.
maybe a
Okay,
little bit bigger.
okay. And Mrs. Petty, you said that this is not a place that Judy would go to, right?
None of them would go down there because the snake was down there all the time.
Mhm.
All of her sisters are here, and we all said, we'd never go in that cellar. We had the barn, we had the
The barn,
garage, we
they
had,
liked
Yeah.
we had every building possible, but that cellar house just spooked us. It was dark and dingy, and I had too many other places. I go play in the hay in the barn. I
Yeah.
didn't play in the cellar house,
That's right.
you know, so, no, it's just, it wasn't a place we would go. It just wasn't.
I grew up on a farm and we had that one place we didn't go either, so I
Yeah,
totally understand
You
that.
understand, see?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'd spend most of our time up in the hayloft, taking binder
that's
twine
what
and
I did
swinging out.
I did too.
They did
Jump at
too,
the top, jump in the hay. When dad and mom
Yep.
went, then you jump.
because at that
Yeah.
time, we
Yep.
were putting up hay loose.
Yeah.
And not in bales, and then we got a baler and began to have bales in, and was different, but the barn was just full and they could go out and jump right down
Yep.
and, wow.
Love it.
Aw, yes,
Yeah.
I did that too.
So see, you guys understand.
Yes.
Totally understand. We used to braid binder twine into ropes and we would swing
Right.
ourselves off from the loft into the hay and shit.
We're all troublemakers.
My dad would come out, you guys are gonna break your necks. You know? Still
Yeah.
did it anyway, though.
See, exactly.
We had some copperheads out there too.
Yep,
God,
loads,
snakes scare
several
me.
copperheads.
Uh,
When we first moved out there, because I had to learn how to look and make sure the difference between the black snakes and the copperheads. And my oldest daughter got bit by a copperhead. I told her not to go over in the weeds where these flowers were, but she wanted it. And she did, and she got bit by a copperhead. And then we had to wrap her foot in ice and took her to the hospital.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
those
she
things aren't
thought-
good.
One of the things I want to set for listeners, because I think we might have moved ahead a little bit. So once,
Right,
I kind of want to take us back a little bit. So once, Mr. Petty, you realized that your lovely home and property were on fire and you ran back down, you got in your truck, you went to the neighbor's house. Is that right?
Right,
Right.
And that you had them call 911.
well, no. They gave me the phone. And they had a cell phone. And it down in the low part of the property down there, you didn't have cell phone service. So I had to take the phone and go back up the hill to call.
So there's no cell phone reception up there.
At the bottom.
At the
At the
bottom,
bottom.
but
bottom.
at the top,
But
yes.
I had to go back up the hill with it to make the call.
Okay, that's really important for us to know. Okay, so there's no cell phone at the bottom of the hill.
Right.
You
Or the
ran back up.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't know yet, you still don't know where Judy is. So you're still out looking for her at this point. You show up, everything is on fire that you love, and it's your family's, safe haven, if you will.
Yeah.
But you're still missing your daughter. Officials start showing up, and what was that like? What was happening at that point?
Not a whole lot from them.
Pretty much.
Can you tell me more about that?
Fire department.
Well, the first two were city police that was out there.
Okay.
And then trying to think whether,
The fire department?
yeah, because the sheriff never showed up. And in fact, he never showed up at all through all of
Did
this.
not show up? I'm sorry.
Nope, he didn't.
No,
show
he
up.
never showed up at all. The sheriff
sheriff.
was in office at the time.
Okay.
Do the fire trucks,
But
can they
he,
make it?
but he said he knew it was a homicide. But he never came to the farm. I knew him pretty well myself.
Yeah,
He,
I was gonna say one thing you wanna speak.
So the fire department comes up, everything's
They
on
did-
fire.
They couldn't
No,
get up.
They said they couldn't
make
get
it.
their trucks up on the hill. But we have a pond right behind the house that they could have hooked some lines up that could have put the fire out, but they didn't do that.
So
never-
they didn't even come
stayed-
up.
Nope, they
No.
stayed at the bottom of the hill. Stayed at the bottom of the hill. And my family even asked them, can you run some lines, use the water in the pond, put the fire
Yeah.
out? We also had volunteer, I'm not sure if I'm ahead of myself, cadaver dogs
Right.
come out.
Oh,
I had-
that was the
I'm
next
ahead,
day.
day.
okay, sorry,
was
I
the
am
following
ahead of
next day.
myself.
Okay. So
Also-
I think, go ahead. I think, and that's why I want to clarify this for all of our listeners too, so that they can understand that the fire trucks couldn't even get up there. It was that muddy. It was that,
Yeah.
Yeah,
unable to drive up.
It's just that backwoods,
Exposed.
it's just that backwoods terrain. I mean,
Right.
unless you have aggressive tires on a high 4-wheel drive,
Right.
most of those hills, you ain't gonna get up.
So what was
Exactly.
their plan?
Just let it burn.
Just let it
Just
burn.
let
That's
it
what they
burn.
said,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Right.
it was already destroyed. I mean, that was almost completely gone anyway.
Just smoldering, smoking.
Now, there's,
How close was that pond to, let's say, the bottom of the hill or where their trucks were? Just so people have an idea.
it was in behind the house.
Okay.
So the truck is a fourth of the mile down on the bottom of the hill. But they still could have used some kind of piping or some kind of hose to
Yeah.
suction from the pond, because the pond's right behind the house, right beside this
Yeah.
other house.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, so.
So
but they
did that,
What?
were you gonna say something, Mr. Petty?
No.
Okay, so they all show up. Everyone's just kind of standing there saying, all right, I guess we're just gonna wait for this to go out.
Yep,
Yes,
Okay, and Mr. Petty, you're saying to them, my daughter's still missing. This is weird. Now that my property's on fire. What did you say that to them? What did they say?
I can't really remember, conversation.
Right.
Is all I know. I went, there's a property next to us. There's a trailer up in there, another muddy road into it. But anyway, I went back ways on a four-wheeler and the neighbor's four-wheeler and checked over there. She wasn't over there. Neighbor's house was there. I went and checked it all over. Places she could have been out there
Right.
and come up with nothing. Had those cadaver dogs hadn't have been there. I don't know how long it take to found her.
The police.
They kept coming from the house to the cellar house. They stay over there a while and then go back to the house. Then they go back to cellar house. That's when I went.
So the dogs were going back and forth.
Right.
Interesting.
I know, Mr. Petty.
Yeah, take your time. Take as much time as you need.
We looked for Judy that day and we found the farm on fire and couldn't find her. So the police at that time got people together to come back out the next day, the following morning, and bring cadaver dogs out and walk the farm to see if she had passed out somewhere in the woods. She was a very bad diabetic also. And we were going to start at the bottom of the hill and comb the entire farm. There were multiple people out there and the police officers and I believe some firefighters, maybe family and friends. And we started early in the morning, the next morning.
Right.
walking.
Okay. Yeah. So that
The-
second day, really, it was just kind of waiting for the fire to go out. Is that right, Mrs. Petty?
Yes.
Okay. So no one
Hey,
was
that's-
really sure where Judy was yet. We're just still looking for her. Had the police started looking for her at that point?
They flew choppers around
Okay.
and for, bodies in it.
Okay.
I don't know what they used, but that's what they pretty much already they've done.
Okay.
And like I said,
The police.
I went down in the cellar house. And that's when I found bones.
Found her jawbone. And that's the way they identified, because it had a tooth on that it wouldn't stay in, so, and the dentist kept giving her fits about it. So she super glued it.